All right, am I on? I'm on. Hello. Hey, and welcome to my session on strengthening couples. What I'm going to plan to do in this hour that we've got together, or even shorter than an hour, is I want to take an entire day's seminar that I do on strengthening couples and squish it down and compact it down into a mighty morsel for you guys to take away that will be in the matter of 50 minutes. So buckle up, hold on, because you're in for a ride. So in this, one of the things that we often want to look at is to make our marriages work, to make our relationships work with our significant loved one. And it would be fine if they weren't just so strange. And so my job is to help people navigate their relationship, understand one another, and understand some of the foundations that produce a relationship of quality. And the place where I begin is in 1 Corinthians 13, which this passage on love. You know, this passage is probably the most common passage that's read at weddings. And yet I had a pastor friend of mine from overseas say, do you know what? I don't know why we read this passage at weddings. He said, because it's got nothing to do with weddings. And in one sense, he's absolutely right. It hasn't. But what I discovered, and this may surprise you, is that 1 Corinthians 13 occurs smack bang between 1 Corinthians 12 and 1 Corinthians 14. You never saw that coming, did you? And you see, 1 Corinthians 12 and 1 Corinthians 14 speak about the way we are to function with one another. And 1 Corinthians 13 talks about the heart we are to have in the way that we function with one another. So in one sense, you're right, this passage has got nothing to do with marriages, but it's got everything to do with relationships. And it talks to us about what love actually is rather than what our society says love is. And in the end, it finishes by saying, and these three things remain: faith, hope, and love. And what I find is that there's these three things that form the foundation of our relationships with our loved ones. We need faith, hope, and love. Although with the word faith that we have there, in the Greek word there for faith is pistos, which can be translated faith, it could be translated believe, or it can be translated trust. See, what is faith? Faith is simply trusting what you believe. And so that's why I pick up, and I find that the word for when we talk about marriages, the way of translating this word is more helpful when we translate it as trust. That what is at the foundation of every relationship, it is trust, hope, and love. And so I draw from that in order to help couples form good foundations. You see, the first leg there in the good foundation is trust. Trust is in fact the foundation of all relationships, of any relationship. You cannot have a relationship unless you have trust. Unless there is the trust at the level that we need, we haven't got a relationship. So when the trust breaks down, when the trust falters, the relationship stalls at that point and potentially also busts apart. And what I find is that when couples come to see me about whatever a couple is wrestling with and facing, in many ways, ultimately, generally, it's an issue of trust. I can't trust that you're going to hear me when I speak. I can't trust that you will treat my sexual needs with some respect. I can't trust that you will handle the finances well. I can't trust the way you're going to be around the kids. I can't trust the way you're speaking to me. So at that point, trust is broken, and that's where the relationship stalls and pain emerges between a couple. because when trust is the bridge, it's the currency of the relationship. And so one of the key things that I get couples to do is to monitor, where am I not being trustworthy for you? And where am I struggling that you are not being as trustworthy as what I need? Because that's what I need to speak into. And so what we'll find is that sometimes couples can fall into the trap of thinking that either you're trustworthy or you're not trustworthy. But the reality is that everyone is trustworthy somewhere, but no one is trustworthy everywhere. So when people are getting together and they're starting their couple life and they're starting their courtship, I'll say part of getting to know the person, you don't actually know the person until you know where they're not trustworthy as well as where they are. That's why trust needs to be built slowly and wisely. We're all trustworthy somewhere and we're all untrustworthy in some place. It just depends on how important and how critical that is in your relationship. You see, my wife absolutely trusts me when I travel and I go about and I'm in different motels or hotels. She would not blink twice at thinking about whether I would be faithful to her. It doesn't even come into her mindset. She knows that I am thoroughly and fully trustworthy to her, that I've committed to her, and that I will not or do not seek another person, nor would I pursue another person or entertain another person's advances to me. But she also knows that she cannot trust me to remember what she asked me to do 5 minutes after she asked me to do it. It's true. So like if she says to me, honey, could you take out the rubbish or could you do this? I'll get up and I'll do it right there and then. She'll go, no, you don't have to do it now. To which I'll say, yes, I do. Because if I don't do it now, I just won't do it at all. There is a running gag in our household. You would not believe the number of times I take the rubbish out and I forget to replace the rubbish bag. I don't know, there is something just programmed into my psyche that makes that seemingly such a difficult task. So I actually had to learn to replace the rubbish bag before I took the rubbish out, just so I knew it got done. We're trustworthy somewhere, but we're not trustworthy everywhere. The key question is, where are you not trustworthy? And learning to be able to ask for what you need that will restore the trust when it gets broken. So we need to monitor and maintain our trust. So a key question for you to focus on, because many couples will be, each person will be very aware where the other person isn't trustworthy. But what you need to own up to is, where are you not trustworthy? Where are you not trustworthy? Because it will be somewhere. How significant is that? And what has she asked for to repair that trust? Because it's not purely a criticism you're hearing. It's a cry for restoring the substance and the validity of our relationship. The second thing that we need here as part of our foundation is we need hope. I mean, you can imagine if you don't have hope in a relationship, if you don't have hope that this relationship can survive, can continue, can flourish, why would you bother continuing? Every couple, and especially couples in pain, need hope that things could be different. And what I'll find there is that couples will often get themselves caught in a dance where I know what I'm going to do and say, I know what you're going to do and say, I know how this all ends up, and it always sucks. And it's always the same old rhythm and routine. And what I'll have is one of the couples will say, look, I would want things to be different, but of course it takes two to tango. They don't seem all that open. They don't seem all that willing to want to change. And so what am I to do with that? To which I tell them, what I need you to understand is when I change me, I change we. You see, a couple is a system. And when you change one part of the system, you change the whole system. And so how do I change the dance steps? Because you can imagine if two people are doing a dance that neither of them like, and each one is waiting for the other person to change the dance steps, guess what changes? Nothing. So how do I change the dance? I change the dance as I change my dance steps. And what are my dance steps? My dance steps are the way that I react to you. So when I change me in that, I actually change we. I change us both. Because one of the things that every couple in conflict have in common is they're each very aware of what the other person is doing wrong. And I can tell you what the other person's doing wrong, and if they just stopped doing that, I'd be fine. But of course, the way that we move forward is when we focus on our dance steps. How am I being? How am I reacting to you? And you see, what I find is that when a couple can get to a place, when one person gets to the place where they realize, if I change me, if I change my dance steps, I begin to influence and change the relationship. Now hope comes back. Because if it's all about you, me needing you to change, I'm powerless. I'm stuck. There's nothing I can do. But if the power is with me as I change my stuff and my side of the fence, now I have the power to change the relationship. Hope comes back. And the third one we see there is love. Now, the problem in our society is we use the word love in such strange and unhelpful ways. Because when you think about it, think about how we might use the word love in our society. You know, we might say, I love chocolate. I love beer. I love the All Blacks. We might say, I want to make love to you. Or we may say, I'm in love with you. The way our society talks about love is the way someone else or something else makes me feel. So that kind of love is very self-centered. That's not actually love at all. That's not the kind of love that we see in 1 Corinthians 13. And you see, if I assume that love is about how you make me feel and you're not treating me very nicely, then many couples make the mistake of believing that I no longer love you. That love somehow has gone out of our marriage, as if love had a shelf life. It doesn't. What's changed between us isn't love per se, it's affection. You see, affection can come and go in a relationship, and it all depends on how you treat me. If you're treating me really nicely and well, if you're ticking all my boxes, well, I feel very warm towards you. I feel quite affectionate towards you. But if things are difficult in our relationship, I might not feel very affectionate at all. But love can still be there. Because what is love? Love is seeking the best for another person, come what may. Love, as we read about in 1 Corinthians 13, that kind of love is a gritty kind of love, a robust kind of love that can breathe life back into the affections when the affections die down. And so, because love is a confusing and loaded word in our society, I'm going to take some time now just to break it apart so that we can understand it better. And I look at it, if you like images and diagram, I break love down into head, heart, and mouth. Or, if you like anagrams, I talk about the core of love, C-O-R-E. And so let's have a look at this. That in this, the first part of the core of love is C. And that there is about being centered. And so what I'll find in relationships is that many times they can get themselves off center. Now, if you imagine that your life is like a single lane country highway, and there's a ditch on this side, and there's a ditch on the other side. And the ditch on this side says selfish, and self-centered. And the ditch on the other side says other person, centered, with a D, dominated, controlled. That because we would hate to be in one of these ditches specifically, what we end up doing is driving our car in the ditch on the other side, because at least we say we're miles away from the ditch we don't like. So as a general rule of thumb, many women drive their ditch in the side where they are other people-centered, where they might be dominated by other people's agendas, but it's what anybody else wants. Why? Because at least it means I'm not selfish in any way. Now, for most men, this may come as a surprise. We've got really no issue with being selfish. But being dominated or controlled, yeah, we're not fans. And so our mind can say we've got to keep miles away from the other side. That when we get back into a healthy place, our brain may go, mate, you are so getting dominated and controlled. It's like you're completely under her thumb. Are you? No. You're actually just being more balanced. You see, I remember when my wife and I got married, we came from two very different worlds. She came from a world that I had heard of before that was called tyre. In my family, our mess had mess. And she said to me, look, honey, what I want to say is that I don't mind if I'm primarily the one who's doing most of the cleaning up the housework, as long as you can help keep things tidy and in its rightful place, I'll take care of that. I thought, well, that's brilliant. She said, yeah, look, you can have clothes on your side of the bed. That's fine. We just want to keep the whole house tidy, which is great. And so we did. And then occasionally she might say to me, oh, honey, I've noticed that the clothes on your side of the bed, they're beginning to pile up. Could you put them away, please? And what would go through my head at the time is, oh, for goodness sake, woman, you've got this whole house under your control. It's cleaned within an inch of its life. And all I want in my house is to have my side of the bed. I mean, is that too much to ask for? No, I never said that to her because I'm not stupid. And the voice in my head said, Richard, you could always put away your clothes as an act of love. To which I said to the voice, oh, shut up, what would you know? But of course, when I put away the clothes and I did it as an act of love, now I'm in control of what I'm doing and I'm getting more centered. Equally, she needed to learn how to ask for what she needed. She used to see me go off with my mates, go out, have fun, do all of this. And she said, so when does it ever get to be my time? I said, any time you want. Any time you ask. But if I ask for it, she said, it feels like I'm imposing that on you. And I feel selfish, self-centered, like I'm dominating or I'm controlling you. No, you're not. You're simply making a request and asking for what you need. Now, was she being self-centered? No, she was simply being more balanced. When I heard her need for me to tidy up my side, was I now being dominated, controlled? No, when I did that as an act of love, I was simply being more balanced. So the first thing that we need to do is to get ourselves more centered so that we can love better. The second thing that we need to do here is we've got to know that love overcomes evil with good. This is about what goes on in our headspace. The Bible says in Romans, don't become overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. And what I'll find is that couples can get themselves into quite an aggressive dance and interaction where there doesn't feel like there's much love in the room. And it feels like we're being highly reactionary. And you may feel like you're on the receiving end of some evil taking place right now. So in this, what I want you to understand is that The reason why we get triggered, the reason why we flare up, the reason why we get caught in this horrible dance is because our pain points push us in that direction. You see, inside of each of us, there are feelings that we just don't want to feel. That when they get triggered, we want to do everything in our power to heal that, to protect us from that. Which is why we may end up getting into quite a nasty interaction with a loved one. And so what we find when this happens is that in this interaction, when we get triggered, we are going to move into what is called a victim mindset that is triggered by the emotional allergies that we have. And an emotional allergy is a feeling that you would absolutely hate to feel. It feels overwhelming. You feel like you're in a place of pain. You know, if we were to drop inside of you a sensation that you are criticized, that you are inadequate, that you are a failure, that you are unloved, there are specific ones that are to you that you will then have an allergic reaction to. And you'll move into an overreaction or an underfunctioning as a result. And then there are some that are just general to perhaps the different genders. But you see, when you think about the last time you had an interaction, an argument, and a fight, if I was to pause you in that and say, being on the receiving end of the treatment that you're experiencing, what doesn't feel good about that to you? How would you label that sensation inside? I just feel disrespected, worthless, useless, a failure, inadequate, unloved, abandoned. And you see, that feeling, which often comes from our past, sits inside of our brain like a landmine, and then it gets triggered, and we flare up or we shut down as a result. And what we don't realize is that the issue in my marriage, in my dynamic, in this conflict that we're having, isn't me, and it isn't her. It's these emotional allergies, these feelings that are bullying us. And these feelings are like facing the giants that are preventing you from entering the promised land. The promised land flowing with milk and honey, where we're supposed to have marital bliss. And I'll tell you what, when you come up against one of these giants, many people will say, do you know what? Going around and mucking around in the desert for another 40 years, that doesn't sound so bad. Let's leave this giant alone. But one of the most loving things you can do is face down this giant. But let me show you how it works in conflicts. That we will fall into a victim mindset or a reactive mindset here. And in your victim mindset, our victim mindset knows three key things. It does three key things. The first thing that we do in our victim mindset is we blame the other person for how we feel. Now that makes sense, doesn't it? Because I was feeling fine until she did this or she failed to do what I'd asked her. And so I'm now feeling attacked, bullied, beaten up, neglected, rejected. And why am I feeling this way? Because of what she's done or what she's failed to do. So who's responsible for the way I feel? It's her. Makes perfect sense. The next thing that we do is we will justify our behavior. So the way that I'm treating you, well, that's just justifiable because I'm just evening the score. I'm just pushing back. I'm just making my point known. And there should be no consequences that come back on me because I was just evening the score in this. And the third thing that we will do in our victim mindset is we'll wait for the other person to change. Because ultimately, the other person is the problem. Sure, I'm not perfect in all of this, but who's the one really causing all of the difficulties here? It's her. And so we'll move into this victim mindset where we blame the other person for how we're feeling. We'll justify our behavior, whether that is yelling, sulking, stamping our feet, shutting off. And we'll then wait for her to come and apologize to us, and we'll receive your apology because I'm that magnanimous. And I'll wait for you to change because you're really the problem. Now, can you imagine, my friends, if you have one person in the relationship blaming the other person, justifying how they respond, and then waiting. As soon as you behave in any way that is uncaring, unloving, hurtful, harmful, not constructive in any way, guess how she now feels? She now feels like she's your victim, and at which point she knows to blame you for how she's feeling, because she wasn't feeling all that bad until you failed to do what she had asked you to do, or you did what she didn't want you to do. She knows that she can justify how she's treating you now because she's just evening the score. She's just making a point. You know, why am I yelling at you? Because you were yelling at me. Why have I skived off and spent the bank account? Or why have I lost myself in a cream donut or a glass of wine? Because of how you're treating me. And what else will she do? She'll wait. She'll wait for you to come and apologize to her. And she'll receive your apology anytime you're ready to give it. And she'll wait for you to change because ultimately you're the problem. Now, my friend, if you've got two people in a relationship and both of them are in this reactive mindset, this victim-based mindset, tell me, what happens to the relationship? Yeah, it's not rocket science, is it? It begins to bust apart and break down pretty quickly. Whereas we don't want to be overcome by evil, but we want to overcome evil with good. So there is an overcomer's mindset here when we're in the midst of conflict, and it is diametrically opposed to the victim mindset. And in this, the first thing that we do in our overcomer's mindset, in our responsive mindset, is we take responsibility for how I feel. And you see, in doing that, we do that by getting a hold and getting a grip of one key truth. She's not making me feel this way. I'm feeling this way all by myself. Now, that doesn't justify her behavior. That doesn't say just suck it up, buttercup, and tolerate it. It's saying that my feelings are actually under my jurisdiction. Now, I have people who say to me, well, don't be stupid, Richard. Of course she's making me feel this way. I wouldn't be feeling this way unless she had done or not done whatever it was. And so the example that I'll always use is if you imagine someone came into this room and picked out one of you and said to you, you worthless, stupid person, no one likes you, no one wants you here, why'd you even bother coming along? And that person scurries out of the room and says, oh, I'm sorry, I shouldn't be here. Now, same person comes in and picks out a different person but says exactly the same words. You worthless, stupid person, no one likes you, no one wants you here, why'd you bother coming along? But that person stands up and looks them in the eye and says, buddy, what's your problem? You see, you've got two different emotional responses. If that person coming in behaving as badly as they are could make someone feel a certain way, then they could make anyone feel that way, but they can't. Why not? Because emotions are not put inside of you. They come from inside of you based on your interpretation of what's going on, based on your experience of the past. So what we've got to do is we've got to realize that inside, with the treatment that I'm receiving, I might be experiencing a, ow, that hurts. But I won't blame you for this feeling. It might be understandable. It might be perfectly normal. But my feelings are under my jurisdiction. So I've got to take ownership over them. The second thing in that, now that I've got responsibility for how I feel, I also have to take responsibility for how I act. And so what I'll say to people when we map out this dance that they do, if we were to look at the behavior that you do in the cold light of day, if it is not constructive to the relationship, it is never justified. I want that to sink in. Because I'll say to people, when you do this behavior, tell me, how does it draw the other person closer? To which, of course, they'll say, well, it doesn't. And I'll say, now I want you to get that because you keep going back to this behavior, hoping for a different response from it, but it's never going to help you. If the way that you speak, the way that you treat your spouse, even if inside you're hurting, if it is not constructive to our relationship, to helping what's going on, it's never justified. So I've actually got to find a different way of communicating, responding to you. And it might be about setting a boundary. It might be about speaking up about what I'm not going to tolerate. But it's done in a way that's constructive. It is speaking the truth in a loving way. And the final one there is rather than waiting, I've got to initiate. I have to initiate an apology for any part where there is ever a kernel of truth that anything that I did was not constructive in the way that we were relating. And that's what I will genuinely apologize for. And I'll also initiate to address the issue. What's the actual issue between us? And you see, my friends, if you have just one person operating in an overcomer's mindset, you change the dance. And you see, when we have you operating in an overcomer's mindset, then now what happens at this point is that you stop being a part of the problem so that you can start to be a part of the solution. You stop inflaming the situation so that you can start to resolve the situation. Because when you're in a victim mindset and a reactive mindset, no one wants to hear your wisdom. Isn't that interesting? I mean, you know how we could sort this out, but no one wants to hear this. This is why Jesus tells us that we are to take the log out of our eye before we seek to take the speck out of our wife's eye. Now, we know Jesus got it wrong, don't we? Because if anybody's got a log in their eye, it's her. Sure, I'm not perfect, but really, it's just a speck. It's small, it's a morsel. There's nothing really to write home about, is there? But isn't it interesting? Without knowing your situation, Jesus places the emphasis of what needs to get sorted out on your side. So we also need to overcome evil with good. We need to learn new dance steps. And we also need to communicate well with our loved ones and learn how to be reasonable with one another. You see, what I'll often find is that in our constructive communication, we're so busy throwing yous and you do this and you always do that. We're so used to communicating in what is called a jackal. Now, a jackal is a term used by a guy called Marshall Rosenberg. And he said that a jackal is a snarling beast that leads with its teeth. And so oftentimes we communicate in snarling kind of ways, in judgmental kinds of ways, where we will say, you're not listening to me, you don't care about me, you're rejecting me, you're selfish, you're lazy. All of those are things that we judge or we label on the other person. And that simply causes a new argument to flare up. But instead, we need to learn to speak the truth in a loving way. We need to learn to speak the truth respectfully. And so that's about using I, that's about keeping our voice soft, that's about speaking with soft eyes. That's about not speaking about our judgment of the other person, but instead speaking about what I'm genuinely feeling and what I need and what I want to ask of you. And so the final one here is we need to be able to negotiate for what we need. So speaking and communicating in a loving, respectful way, but also being able to negotiate for what we need. Because many couples I'll find just have no ability to negotiate at all. It feels like that when one says something, that's the end of the story. What many men miss is that when a woman asks a question, she doesn't want an answer. She wants a conversation. Whereas as a bloke, we'll hear a question, we'll answer a question. Honey, what would you like for dinner tonight? What do I want? I want steak. Oh, so does it not matter what I want? Do you not care about what I want? No, you just asked me what I want, so I told you. You can have your opinion too. And so we need to learn how to move into a state of negotiating and communicating for what we need. So I'll move through these because we just don't have time to go over them in too much detail. And the final one here in the core of love is that we need to love each other in a way that meets the other person's emotional needs. Now, how many people here have heard of love languages? Yeah, that's great, and that's a wonderful beginning. The thing that I found is I love the language of love languages. I think that's incredibly helpful. The thing that I find with love languages is that they're so general. And what was really disheartening for me was when I discovered my wife had all 5. That just seemed really tiring. But one of the things that I get couples to do is do a tyre exercise. I'll say to them, what is it that you know that if your spouse was to do this, this would spin your wheels? I mean, you know, as husbands, if your wife was to do this or treat you in this way, you'd go, that's quite nice really, isn't it? I like that. That feels really good. And what is it that you know you do specifically and concretely that when you do that, quite softens your wife, really? You know, she quite likes that. It's lovely. And we also look at what deflates my tyre and what will deflate hers. And when we do this as an exercise, we've got to be very specific. Because if she says, oh, I love it when I feel cherished and loved by him. Well, that's great, but what on earth does that look like? He may say, well, I really love it when she validates me and respects me. Great. What on earth does that look like or sound like for you? We've got to get clear and concrete in that. And I'll get couples to put them together, but you see, then what I'll get them to do, which oftentimes they miss, because at this point, all we've got in front of us is a to-do list. And who wants to do another blasted to-do list? You'll probably do it for up to 3 weeks, and then you'll just get bored of it or you'll forget about it. But what I'll get them to ask is this. When I do this for you, that's what you say you need from me, tell me, how does that help you? What does that do inside for you? How do you feel inside? Because if my wife says, you're on the to-do list, I need you to listen to me, give me your undivided, I think, oh, okay, I can do that. But if I asked her why, if she says to me, when you give me your attention and listen to me, I feel like I'm the only woman in the world, and that I feel like I matter and I'm significant, and I've got to tell you, I feel warm towards you. Well, now I want to do that. You know, doing that, pushing this button in her, does nothing for me. But if it causes that kind of feeling inside of her, I want to do that. That's how I win with her. So when we understand how it helps a person inside, now it turns it from a to-do list into I want to-do list. Do you see that? So my friends, let's monitor the trust level and maintain hope when we realize that the power to change our relationship is also with us, and it's not that we're powerless to them. And let's learn to be centered, to overcome evil with good and not be reactionary, to be reasonable in our communication, and to love the other person in the way that they need their emotional needs to be met. You with me? Well, I'm sorry, my friends, that's me racing through that at high speed. And so I haven't even given you an opportunity to ask questions. We're now breaking for afternoon tea time. Oh, I do have questions time. I saw that I was over time. But that's because you know there are people like me who go over time anyway. That was smart. Oh, this is great. We've got opportunity. Let's kick in. Have a quick chat with the person beside you. What stood out to you in that conversation and what I shared with you? And then I'll call you back and we'll do a Q&A. And we have a mic as well. Tell me, as I was sharing in that, what stood out to you? Anyone? Hello. That communication's important. And the thing to realize with communication is couples will often say that the difficulty that we're having is communication. But communication is such a big and broad topic. It's a matter of getting it condensed down to what's the difficulty in the way that we're communicating. Great.
Is this? Oh, yeah. I found in my marriage that, I see those three words, but I feel that in the center of that should be God in your marriage and in your fatherhood and everything like that.
Totally.
So when I get in heated arguments, I pounce like I'm a man. I do that. And I've come to realize when I come with my brothers that I need to just step back and take 5 seconds and just absorb what's said to me.
Brilliant. It's stepping out of that dance. And it is like one of the things I was saying in the other group is that one of the safest things for a wife is a man submitted to the Lord. And that we want to have God at the core and at the center of our life. And in these are dynamics of patterns that we can get into where we say we love the Lord and we want to be under his jurisdiction. But there are things inside of our human nature that still rise up. And so these are simply tools to restrain those so that we can be better in line with what God is asking of us. Yeah, no, that's a good point. Hello.
I just have a question about, obviously everybody's different and everybody perhaps deals or handles disagreements in a different way at a different speed. In some situations you have that, like for example, in my marriage, my wife is very quick to get in there, wants to, have the argument, feels, I guess, good that the argument's sorted and wants to move on. But I like to process, I guess, and think about things, and often my response might come a day later once I've thought clearly about it. And
Sure.
I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts or comments on that kind of thing.
Yeah, there will often be a dynamic in relationships where one is the pursuer, it's called, and one's the withdrawer. Now, what that means is your wife in your relationship is the pursuer. And what she's saying is, connection with you matters so much to me that if you were to go away and think about it, I would be left feeling like I'm alone, like you don't care about me, like I'm abandoned. And that would put me in such a place of pain that I am desperate like a person drowning, that I will pursue you for connection because that's how important you are. Whereas if you're like a standard withdrawer, you go, yeah, that just seems a bit overwhelming. There's too much emotion happening here. This is just flooding me. If I could just take some time where we could move you away, where I could just think about this, and then I could come back to it, that would be good. Sometimes the withdrawers say, I just need to go away and think about it, and they never come back. But it's recognizing that in that's a matter of negotiating what we need. Honey, I know that you need to resolve this and sort this out now. I just can't give that to you because I need time to process. But then you speak validation. But know that when I say time out, I still love you. I still want you. I'm still for you. This is me trying to resolve it, and I will come back by. And you give a time frame so she doesn't despair. If we can sort this out, if you give me till tomorrow, I will come back and I'll engage with you, and I will genuinely try to resolve it, but I'll have time to work it through. So because everyone's different, you negotiate for what you need, but you clarify the intention of your heart, which is for the other person. Because what most people don't realize is that our ways of trying to resolve conflict are our desperations to remain close. So for a withdrawer, it's, I so desperately want to be close to you, but right now with the way that you're arguing or yelling or criticizing me, it's too painful to be close to you. I just feel safer if I'm somewhere away. And so that's when you can end up pursuing one another. So negotiate for what you need while still affirming and validating that they are loved and affirmed and wanted. Cool. Someone else?
Yeah, hi. One of the struggles I have with my wife is that when it comes to our kids, she uses me to be the discipliner. And it's makes me look, well, to me it appears that I look to be the bad guy all the time.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't always want to be the discipliner. You know, I want to be the one to show my kids that, hey, you know, I can give leeway to certain things or whatever it may be. The other thing that sometimes gets to me is when my wife wants backup, you know, in an argument with our children. You know, she'll be like, hey, hon, yeah, what do you think of what I'm saying? Is that right? You know, but then I'm thinking, hang on, man, I had an opinion before and you didn't listen to me and you decided on me. And it's a bit of a thing for me, with me and my partner.
So in that, there's a couple of things here. The first one is where you were saying that she will certainly want backup in the conversation, but she also wants you to be the disciplinarian. And so in that, it's you expressing, honey, I'm not actually comfortable with doing that, especially when the issue that you wanting me to discipline, I wasn't even around for. So let me ask you this question. If you were to do the discipline that we both agree with, what feeling would emerge that you would hate to feel? Because I imagine she's getting bullied by a sense that she doesn't want to be the mean one, the cruel one, the dominating one. It may be that there's no feeling that emerges, but she's got into the wrong belief that as the head of the home, that you are the one who has to take care of all of this. And so it's simply a wrong understanding. And it's letting her know that when I do this with the kids, it simply comes across like I'm always the one doing the discipline, which means that I'm always the bad guy. Whereas I also want to be the loving father here as well. So can we talk about what it's going to take for you to be able to provide the discipline in the moment that's actually needed? When she asks for backup with the kids, part of it is affirming your wife in the moment, but discussing it separately when you're apart, saying, actually, I backed you up in the moment, but I'm not really in agreement with that. I can't go with that. I need to talk with you about what we can be in agreement. And what I'm going to ask of you is that you don't put me in that place again. It sounds like she's feeling powerless with the kids. And so she needs to gain you to be her source of power. Whereas if you can help her understand the power and the mana that she has as mum, then she walks with an empowered and a confident sense rather than always needing to defer to you. Well, my friends, I've just heard the hooter, so obviously it's time for a refreshment. Let's finish up here, go grab a drink, and we'll get ready for our final round.